I really genuinely don't see myself like that, but I guess I've worked with people that are so high up in their game that I don't sort of see myself in that way. But am I proud of myself? I don't know.
What you achieved from modelling for 40 years?
Well, when I go back and I see the body of work that I did and the people that I met and that liked me and that rebooked me and the designers and the photographers that I was regulars for and, even the parties I was invited to and stuff, I guess, I don't know if I'm proud, but I feel lucky and I loved it and maybe I was the right place at the right time. I have to say, throughout my career, I really did work with, the best designers in the world. Bob Mackie was such a lovely man. He's still designing. He's apparently still doing costumes for sure. And I loved Albert, who was designing for Lanvin, who really sadly died during COVID. But just Oscar de la Renta, these men were just so brilliant and wonderful men, so polite and so talented, and it was a privilege really to be working with these great artists and designers. It did, but you see, I still think of Amber and Shalom as supermodels. I mean, they're the next tier down. I did shows with them as well, but they were sort of still supermodels, super girls, superwomen, but they were sort of the next tier down. But the fashion and Peter Lindbergh and, the style was changing. So it was sort of a new guard coming in, which it needed, and that's when a lot of the girls that I started off modelling with in the late 80s sort of moved out. Models' budgets now aren't what they used to be. I think it's sort of one career where fees have actually come down or stagnated. Oh, actually, you know what? It's not true, because now, so when I would do a commercial now, for example, the media run is so big because they take into account, all the Instagram and all the different countries of social media. It's, so the budgets are really big again because the viewing is so much wider. The thing is, I don't feel old, so when someone says 34 years ago, it's, my son's only 20, it is a long time ago, but it just feels like the other day, I guess. Time flies when you're having fun. It's such a cliche, but I don't sort of think of it as back in the day. I just think it as part of my life, and it sort of directed me to be who I am now, and all the experiences I had and working with the people at the top of their game, and it's helped sort of influence me as a stylist, which is what I'm doing now. So, and I still work with people that I used to work with 34 years ago. I still get asked to do a shoot with Sam McKnight, or, I needed a makeup artist for a job I was styling, so I got Mary Greenwell to come in. It's still... and in fact, I was out with Charlotte Tilbury the other night, and she used to do my makeup when she was assisting Mary before she was famous, but it still just feels like the other day. Obviously, working in Europe and in New York and London is completely different than working in New Zealand, because the budgets are so big. So, shows are put on and they're hundreds of thousands of pounds or millions of dollars. The production is just huge, and, the cars pick you up and they take you to work, and the catering again is fantastic. They've got the best hairdressers and makeup artists in the world, whose fees are tens of thousands a day. All the models' fees, the amount of money it takes to deliver these fantastic top-line international collections. It's just a huge money-making industry, and the production and the thought that goes into these shows, they're prepared 6 months in advance. So it's just a slick operation. So, of course, naturally, with the budgets that are in Europe and the States compared to New Zealand, I guess, would be the main point of difference. the world it's just a huge big orbit of everything. Everything's been done, and everything, you can do everything, and none of it's in fashion or out of fashion now. Yeah, now it's anything. Everyone, everyone's individual, which I just love. And there's so much diversity now in fashion, and in magazines and in photo shoots and just in publicity in general and advertising in general. We've got every colour of the skin, every age, every weight, disability models, and I think that's really great. Oh, I had so many for different reasons. I used to love Yasmin Ghouri's walk. I used to like how Linda did her eyebrows. I never wanted to have the mood of Naomi, although we got on well because she was coming from London as me, so we were often sharing flights. I didn't understand Kate Moss when she first hit the scene, but of course I totally do now. She's beautiful, iconic, and just stunning. And again, I think she really grew into her face as well. Yasmin Abon is a friend of mine. She's beautiful. I don't know. I had lots of moments made really special friendships with lots of the girls over the years.
But which of them encompasses the 90s? Or you one model? Was it Kate? Or was it Yasmin? All of you are going to be going one, like Kate.
Who would come? I'm.
I'm. 1990s. Which model comes?
Oh, I mean, it has to be Linda. I mean, I know she was around in the early 80s, but she's still Linda, and it's 2024. I mean, she is just so amazing, and she's been through so much. And I went to hear her speak at the end of last year at the Cadogan Hall in London, and she was just phenomenal, telling her story and her stories. And she's still so beautiful, and she's been through so much. And I think she's a really brave woman to come out and, face her fears and launch herself into the public again.
Yes.
Yeah, no technology for castings. And when you phoned into the agency, you'd have to call from a coin box or back home from your house. And you'd have to write down by hand all the appointments or castings or job details for the next day or flight details. And then a few years later came the fax machine, which was brilliant because then the agents would fax through all the details for your flights or where you had to be the next day. But I can remember in Tokyo, I don't think we even had an A to Z. That was like, you couldn't even read an A to Z in Tokyo. So our agent would sort of walk us around, and he would still get lost because it's so confusing there. Paris, I've still kept my arrondissement book that I bought in 1987. Fallen apart, but it's got so many memories of it for me. And I've got a brilliant sense of direction, even now. So good. I've travelled around the world reading maps. I've got good. I don't need my iPhone now. My life just took a course that I didn't plan, if that makes sense. I didn't arrange in my mind that I wanted to be a model or that was going to happen. Somehow it just did. I was Hamish Keith encouraged me in the early 80s to go to Tokyo. He said, "Oh, you should go to Tokyo." He said, "They'd love you there with your red hair and big nose and white skin." And I thought, you know what, why not? I'm 18, 19, and I just have a little adventure and go. It was some adventure. I got really homesick and hated it and got a contract and realised I had to come back and actually go back for 2 months and live there and fulfil the contract. But it was the best thing I ever did. That, I guess, in a way, that was my university education. That was my degree, heading off to Tokyo on my own, so young, and learning about, how to navigate life and cultures. And I think modelling's really easy. I mean, you don't have to have a degree for it. You just turn up looking like you, and you're transformed into the image that they see you that fits their product, and you get paid really well at the end of the day, and you normally get taken there and driven home and beautiful food. It's a social day out, really. I mean, in the beginning, it's intimidating and you feel very unconfident because you're worried about am I very good? Am I delivering? Am I giving them what they want? I used to, sometimes if there was a girl on set before me, I'd watch and try to pick up a few tricks when I was really young if I was nervous. But it's a great job. I mean, it's not easy. It's not taxing. I mean, how fabulous to be driven to an airport, to get on a plane, to fly somewhere. Very rarely did I have substandard accommodation. Sometimes, yes. But then I could move out and, if I complained to the client or my agent and they weren't going to change it, I could change it myself. I think it did help that I had an individual look. I was very pale, I didn't go in the sun. I've got a sort of a strong Roman nose, long red hair. I definitely think that I had my own look, so that probably helped with the longevity. Because, again, when grunge came in, it was much more of a stereotypical look. And a lot of the models in Europe and New York at that time were coming from Eastern Europe, so they had sort of like long, straight, sort of dirty blonde hair, beautiful girls, symmetrical faces, just gorgeous. But there wasn't so many personalities on the runway, whereas, or in the magazines. So when I was doing the shows, every girl looked different. There was like girls with the big smiles, girls with the big nose. There were girls that would, everyone was projecting. And there were black girls, Chinese girls, albino models. I mean, when I used to do Christian Lacroix, his muse, Murray, she had, a grey barb. There was just so much variety. And actually, interestingly enough, quite a few of those girls that had individual looks back then, as I did, still continue to model successfully now. Right. Oh, that's kind. Well, I think that's because I was born old. I think I just had a look that, I look back at, I look back at photos of me in the 80s and different editorial shoots and even shows, things that I was doing. I don't even know how I got booked for the jobs. I just look at it and I just can't even imagine that I was taken seriously as a model, although I realised I must have been, because I was, modelling in some of the best shows and best magazines in the world with all the girls at the time that were the supermodels. So, it's flattering to look back on, but I feel that I started looking better in the 90s too. Maybe I just got more confident and better at presenting myself or familiar with my own style. And I kind of never gave up on my own style. Everyone would wear out flat shoes, I'd still have on a heel, or girls were doing no makeup, I'd always just do my eyeliner and my Kevin Aucoin lip pencil, because I'd been so fortunate over the years to work with the best, Kevin Aucoin, Bobbi Brown, Orbe, Sam McKnight, all the big cosmetic brands that are still huge in the world today. I worked with all those men and women, and I learned all the tricks from them. So I just guess over time, you just develop your own style and grow into your looks. Yeah, absolutely didn't need to retire. It's even a word that's foreign to me now. I wouldn't even dream of it. If I still get a good modelling job now, I'll take it. I just love the industry and I love the business. And, I did all the shows with Linda, Christy, Naomi, Kate, Yasmin, Gail Elliott, Yasmin Guri, Karen Ma. In fact, my first show for Saint Laurent, I walked with Jerry Hall and Iman. They of course, is a generation older, and that was actually their last show before sort of the new guard came in. So that was an incredible experience. But no, we would all sit back. So we just thought we were young. Well, we were young, but it never occurred to us that because we were going to be turning 28 or 30 or 33, that we wouldn't keep working. Some girls stopped working. I guess, they got married and had children, or a lot of girls didn't enjoy it as much as I did. I absolutely loved it. I've always loved fashion. I loved the social side of it. I loved the glamour. I loved the parties. I loved the income, the travel. So for me, it was never a question of stopping. Yeah, still isn't. There was just more variety. I think it was a lot quicker. There were less models, so we used to have to change 2 or 3 times. for each show, sometimes maybe 3 times. The better the model, the less changes you had. So occasionally if I'd turn up and I'd have one outfit change, I'd sort of felt like that designer really liked me and I'd made it, and I'd be put in 1-star outfit rather than 3. Magazines in the 90s were just major. Like, you'd be so excited. You knew what date the new British Vogue would be coming out, or the American Vogue, or Italian Vogue, Paris Vogue. I mean, Vogue was my thing, obviously. But, magazines had a lot of power then, and most people now download the magazines on digital, and I think less people are buying magazines than they used to, and magazines now have a lot of political stance to them, and lifestyle and interiors, and lifestyle stories on women in business, which is fantastic, but there's less fashion content than there used to be. I guess some of the ones I mentioned before. I mean, I just worked with such great. I was fortunate that I always worked with brilliant directors. They were all sort of quite famous and creative and artistic. I did find TV commercials quite nerve-wracking. There's a little bit of pressure on you to perform, and I'm not a good actress at all. Or I've tried, but I'm not. And I always did feel that sort of pressure to make sure that the ad agency and the client and the directors were happy that I was benefiting their product. Yeah, in the 90s, and a few in the 80s, but in the 90s I did a lot of TV commercials, and that was always the winner job to get. If you booked a commercial, you were absolutely thrilled, because you either got a massive buyout or residuals and repeat fees. So I was very fortunate. I mean, I did some amazing commercials. I did Cousins Pearl Soap, where I was sort of Venus coming up out of a shell. What is another one of my favourite ones? I did Harvey's Bristol Cream Sherry, where I lied to get the job and said I could horse ride side saddle at Longleat Castle. And Nicholas Rogue directed that, so that was it was a week's shoot. In those days, the commercials took like 3, 4, 5 days to shoot. Did quite a few for Smirnoff. Did quite a few legendary, well-known commercials with very famous directors. And it was, in those days, well, still is actually, it's like being on a mini film set.
Yeah, Delise said she got her own trailer.
Yeah, you do.
Picked up from the airport.
Yeah.
You're going shooting in a villa in Spain.
That's right.
Different 7 days.
Yeah, no, it's still like that. So, commercials, you always get picked up in the morning, transported in a limo, you get a trailer, you've got a robe, you've got your own hair, makeup, stylist, all in the trailer with you. We're just hanging out for the day until they call you on set. The runner comes to get you. Fantastic catering. If it's sunny, they've got an umbrella. If they're raining, they've got an umbrella. It's really fantastic. Well, when the supermodels would walk into the shows, and they could always come later because they were divas, and I'd always when the supermodels walked into the shows, they were allowed to come a bit later. So my thrill of the day, or the pinch me moments, is I always wanted to see what they were wearing, because I've always been so hung up on style and fashion and who had a presence and who wore what. So I would always check out who was wearing what. It was always a competition in those days as well. So when Prada launched, we all went out and bought together a Prada bag on 59 and Madison. They had their first boutique there, and we all bought like a little nylon bag, really small. So the competition was who could go to a show, or who could make the small bag last for the day without taking anything, because in the 80s we kind of had bigger bags. You'd take your own bits of makeup or changes of underwear, but things got sort of a little bit more the girls got bigger and everything got more glamorous, and the hair and makeup artists were just so fantastic. So you could just turn up to a show literally with, I don't know what we had those days, like, front door key, packet of cigarettes, and this little tiny Prada bag that we would make last all day. So that was the difficult thing. You would shoot these amazing editorials. You'd go to Florence or some location somewhere and shoot a beautiful story for a foreign magazine, and then to try and get the tear sheets to get them into the book was always difficult. There was one magazine store in London, just at Oxford Circus, that was very famous, so all the models and creatives, everyone would go in there to buy the magazines, but then they'd have like 1 or 2 copies, and then the one that you wanted, that you knew you were going to be and you couldn't get, and then the client never sent them to your agent. So they were quite hard to get, but when you did, you had to, get them copied. In those days, it was really expensive to slide them into your books. Now, of course, we don't even have portfolios. It's all digital. From experience, or from the girls that I knew and that I would have been modelling with, say, when I was very young, like 19 or 20 in Japan, and then I went to Paris a few years after that. So we all were very young in our young 20s, early 20s. I think the girls that stopped early were more the commercial girls that had fabulous swimwear bodies or lingerie, where the catalogue girls, I think their career didn't have the longevity to it because they didn't have sort of the high fashion look that could keep maybe transitioning over the decades. The 90s were pretty heady. I don't think they were sort of innocent days. I mean, there were budgets and parties and fun and excess. No one was really worried about, it didn't seem like anyone was worried about overspending or having a good time. Yeah, I wish I'd kept all my Polaroids, because the back 2 pages of a model's portfolio is all their Polaroids. I've probably got them somewhere in a box at home. I love the Polaroids because that was my diary. That was my day-to-day diary of what I did. And last week at my mother's house, I started cleaning out a whole lot of boxes, and I just decided, put it all, black bin liners, 6 of all my work, and I just got rid of it all. And if I'd come across the Polaroid pages, I would have kept them, because really that was my diary of all the jobs I loved and the designers I worked for and the makeup artists and the hairdressers and other models. They really told a story to me. I guess I built up to it, and I'd done a lot of shows before that, and I'd already been in Milan, and I don't know, it sounds cliche to say that you take it in your stride, but in a way you do. And I guess for me, the pinch me moments were more when I'm sitting next to Linda Evangelista and we're, having our makeup done and we're just chatting, or, Karen Mulder was talking about when she split up with her boyfriend. Well, Linda one day said, I'm going to dye my hair red tomorrow. Don't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone. And to me, that was the more pinch me moments, or watching Françoise Nard do the makeup, or learning all the tricks of the trade, the quiet little moments. Lulu de la Falaise trimming my hair to get a little sample of the colour for a chignon. Just little things like that were more my pinch me moments. Now it's a disadvantage if you're just a beautiful blonde girl. It's a disadvantage. Models are seeking, I know this for a fact, they're out there seeking girls that are a little bit different. Older girls, generally they want grey hair. They don't want thin girls all the time. Outsize is a really positive thing. Obviously every race, every nation has to be addressed in every campaign. Transgenders, fluidity, it's really changed a lot. So there's something there for everyone, but the stereotypical model that we used to have in the 80s, 90s, 2000s even, is definitely gone. Agencies aren't full of marketing those girls and boys anymore. Well, it wasn't really a quick transition, moving from the 80s into the 90s. The 80s were definitely about the beginning of a lot of excess. So, for example, the style and the fashion, the hair, the makeup was completely, over the top. And then slowly in the early 90s, we saw that transition into grunge and natural makeup, and was just a different sensibility. But the 80s were fun. Big earrings, lots of jewellery, music, glamorous parties. It was a lot more decadent than the 90s. I can't really say that I recall everything being beige. I noticed that design and fashion was more pared down. I mean, there still were the designers that were known for their opulence, that carried on doing what they were doing, or for the women that were buying couture, or for girls that wanted like magnificent party dresses. But I didn't notice colour palettes changing so much. I'm not sure, maybe that wasn't such a thing in Europe. But a lot of the Japanese designers that had been really well known and very successful in the early 80s, like 84, 85, they were becoming fashionable again in the early 90s, like Yohji Yamamoto, Comme des Garçons, just because they had the very pared down aesthetic, and they always did without the hair and makeup and all the glamorous trimmings. What made me carry on to the 90s is that the work didn't stop coming for me. I was just super lucky. I always joke and say that I was born old. I had a face that was born to be old, because I never really stopped working. It never occurred to me to start looking for another job, because work was still coming in. And the early 90s for me were incredibly successful in New York. That's sort of really where I was hitting my stride in New York, with the shows in New York and the photo shoots in New York. And of course they paid really well, and I'm not going to say no, because I was, over 25. So yeah, I guess I never really finished, because the work was just always there. And I was fortunate. You forget so much, because I've done a lot, travelled a lot. You forget so much of what you've done, and photos and videos are just the best memory. So it just sort of reminds me of things that I did that were, really great. Well, not really, because I've got it all in here, and I've got great memories, and I'm excited about what's going on now. So I never look back. I never think, in hindsight. I always look forward. I'm really grateful for what I did and what I've experienced and who I am, and it was amazing. But yeah, I don't need to jump back anywhere. I'm just really happy to keep moving forward. I had a lot of favourite designers that I'd worked for over the years, but I guess consistently for 6 years or 7 years was Yves Saint Laurent. I mean, Mr. Saint Laurent was a legend and such a gentleman, and did his best to put all the models at ease. But I was quite fortunate, because I did the pret-a-porter and the haute couture, so he would look at someone's face and style and make the outfit for them from scratch, from a toile. So I got to do fittings with him for my own outfits. In fact, all the models did. And backstage was always fun. When I say backstage, I meant backstage at at the house on Avenue Marceau. So we had our robe, and we had our own lipstick with our names printed on it, and Loulou de Falaise was always there, and everybody was smoking and drinking and having fun and gossiping, and it was just such fun days. So whenever I booked the show again and again, I was always like super thrilled. But when you're younger, in a way, you just take everything in your stride. And I wasn't in awe of him then. I mean, I am now. I still wear Saint Laurent, and this is vintage Saint Laurent, but I still buy the brand. It's my favourite brand. But when you're a model and you're just working away, you're just professional, and you turn up and you realise that you're with an icon and a legend. But it's just sort of another day and another job, but a really fun one, and I guess quite an important one, because when I started doing Saint Laurent is when sort of different TV channels, Elsa Clinch, House of Style, and different, they'd want to interview me backstage when they were sort of buzzing to hear that I was going to be the new Saint Laurent girl. So that was one of my favourite ones to do. I love catwalk and photographic, really. I mean, catwalk, I think, was what put me on the map. You know, I got really sort of well known for the runway, and then the photographic jobs just sort of followed, really, in the commercials, TV commercials. Well, I don't know. I think creativity is just on your own level, really, and where you're at. I'm always amazed when I go to shoots and sets how sophisticated everything is now. With the lighting, everything's so much quicker. There's not the old days of the Polaroids and taking hundreds of photos. Now it's just snap, 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 came up on a screen. That's the shot. That's the one we're going to use. Quick retouch and boom. You know, it's everything's quicker, it's faster. Shoots I don't think are as long. The shoots I do aren't as long as they used to be, that's for sure. Time is money. Money is time, you know.
Tell me about...
I first noticed a difference when I was in New York, and I was, if I'm right, maybe 1991, and I did the Marc Jacobs show, and that was the first lean that he did towards grunge. So up until then, I'd always had sort of like big curly hair or very sleek Jessica Rabbit, Rita Hayworth, a lot of jewellery thrown on, you know, shoulders, shoulder pads, brocade fabrics, and then all of a sudden Marc did a show that was just completely pared down. It was like super simple, and the hair was just sort of pulled back in a low ponytail, and I thought, this is definitely a change. I guess with the transition from like the late 80s and 90s, when the grunge movement came along, I didn't really have the walk that fitted. I was so used to like the heels and the sachet, and so the girls like myself just didn't really translate very well walking down the runway and sort of flat shoes, staring straight ahead. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why I did less shows then.
Were you quite relieved when grunge fucked off?
Totally thrilled when grunge went. I was like the only person turning up for work, still in heels, wearing Azzedine Alaïa. But yeah, no, I mean, I didn't mind grunge, of course not. And I saw it as a movement, and I thought it was very clever. But I thought it was a shame that people thought it was fashionable to be like downbeat and look sort of druggy and sad and poor, when really a lot of them didn't want to do it. They were just doing it to conform to this movement that, Marc Jacobs brought in. But it was a pivotal point in fashion. It was great that it happened. And I was so upset when grunge came in, because I had created, I'd been modelling for Azzedine Alaïa, and I'd created this amazing wardrobe, and I sold or gave away everything that wasn't Alaïa. And then grunge came in a few years later, and I still had my fabulous Alaïa wardrobe, because he used to invite the models to his atelier in Paris, and we could sort of literally buy it for 70 or 80% off, or he'd give us pieces. So I was definitely not parking my high heels and my Alaïa dresses and coats for anyone. So and grunge wasn't me, because I love makeup, and I love... it's not like I really do my hair, but it was just not for me. And some girls that I've been working with really made an effort to translate their look into grunge, but to be honest, then it's not genuine. Then it was sort of a little bit fake, and I don't think it really worked for them. With the movement of grunge came in a whole new line of models. So myself and other girls were still working on for designers and shoots where they wanted sort of glamorous. But yeah, a whole sort of a new brigade came in with the movement. I think when you turned up for a casting in those days, you had to look like the girl on the front of your card. But of course, with the magicians of hair and makeup and fashion and lighting and all the great photographers, I did photo shoots that I just loved, that literally wouldn't have known it was me. But what was the question? No lenience. Yeah, no, if you didn't fit the clothes, you were out. But I fortunately could eat everything and not put on weight, but it's quite helpful as a requisite for being a model, I guess. But it didn't bother me that there wasn't retouching in the days. I never thought about retouching when I was young and I was getting these great jobs, so it must have been because I looked okay, even though I didn't always think I did. So, I wasn't bothered about retouching. Now, of course, I quite like a little bit of retouching and fine-tuning. But also, on the other hand, because I'm older and diversity is very fashionable now, I do lots of jobs where they want me to embrace my age, which I'm proud of and totally happy to have very high acceptance for that. And I do find it hard, actually, if I don't have really good makeup and hair and lighting, to love the result at the end.